Have you ever come across a game that you are really excited about, but by the time you got to the end of it, you couldn't help but feel disappointed even though you know the game is good? Because that's exactly how I felt when I finished the Plucky Squire. Every step I made through the game, I saw glimpses of greatness from the story, combat, and puzzles. Everything I wanted from this game is here. The problem is, I couldn't shake the feeling that the devs never respected me as a player as I made my way through the game. And yes, before I go any further, I know to a certain extent you could argue this game is obviously not made for someone like me. I understand that it's more tailored to a younger audience, and personally, if someone came up to me and asked what a good game would be for someone's first game ever, I would say this is a great place to start, because from start to finish, the game ran pretty much flawlessly for me performance-wise, minus a few frame drops here and there. Plus, I never encountered any bugs or glitches, which I played it on the Xbox Series X. Also has a wide variety of mechanics that are pretty cool to play around with, but with that said, I want to go through the actual mechanics and gameplay of the game before I dive into why I was so disappointed by the time I got to the end of the game. So the gameplay of the Plucky Squire is very simple but has some interesting twists to the simpleness. As the main character Jot, your primary weapon is a sword. This sword only has one basic attack to start with, but as you make your way through the game, you will come across a vendor named Martina that sells additional sword attacks and upgrades to increase damage for those attacks by exchanging light bulbs which you find throughout the world. Now, these attacks you buy include moves like a plunging sword attack with a little area of effect around it, or my personal favorite, throwing your sword out like a boomerang, but you can call it back mid-flight at any time, or stick it to walls and call it back after you reposition to hit multiple enemies, which I had a lot of fun doing this. Another interesting aspect about the combat is how it can feel different during different perspectives. You have your basic over-the-top view, then you have this side-scrolling view which from this perspective allows you to jump on enemy heads Mario style. Then you have the 3D areas, which obviously changes up how you use your surroundings for cover or moving around during combat. So they do a really good job making each of these perspectives feel like their own thing, but still connected since all of your sword abilities can be used in any of these perspectives, which this connectiveness of these different perspectives is expanded on even further when you factor in Jot's more unique abilities. Because the primary mechanic of the game is Jot's ability to jump in and out of books or pictures to traverse the world, which as you're making progress through the game, you will at times hit roadblocks in Jot's storybook world of the Plucky Squire, so you will have to jump out of the book to grab an item that gives you a new ability of some kind. But I should note Jot's ability to jump in and out of the book and other places can only be done through these green portals called Metamagic portals. Which there's two different kinds of these. Green swirls allows you to simply jump in and out as much as you want, while the stars launch you like a cannonball and are much more restrictive in use since they can only be used within the book. But getting back to the items you need to clear these roadblocks you run into, these include various of things from gauntlets that allow you to manipulate the book to move objects around or give you access to pages that have secrets hidden within them, to stamps that allow you to stop objects in their tracks, or bombs to blow up obstacles or damage enemies from outside the book. When all of this is flowing together, it's a fantastic experience, and that experience also carries over to the puzzles as well. Puzzles have you doing a variety of tasks as well to progress that can be pretty engaging since you're doing things like manipulating words to change the world within the book, like turning it from nighttime to daytime, or turning a giant block into cheese so you can pass an evil rat. These are very well done puzzles, and this does even factor in that you will also be jumping in and out of the book to solve some of these puzzles as well. Which, when the puzzle aspect of the game mixes with the combat aspect, this is honestly when the game is at its best. Well, outside of its cool boss fights anyway, since they all use wildly different gameplay mechanics from classics like Punch-Out or Tetris, which is honestly what I was most impressed about when it came to the game. The way the devs were able to use all these different mechanics and perspectives seamlessly without making the game feel disjointed was so well done. But unfortunately, not everything is perfect, at least not for me, and ultimately why I ended up not loving this experience despite everything it does right, and it has everything to pretty much do with the story.
Once upon a time, there was a plucky squire named Jot.
The story of the Plucky Squire isn't bad. You follow Jot, who is the Plucky Squire himself, as he journeys to defeat the evil wizard Humgrump, who wants to take over the story and become the main character. You are joined by a variety of companions, the main two being Jot's best friends Violet and Thrash, who both have their own character arcs in the story that are handled very well. Then you have the also awesome wizard Moonbeard, who acts as the mentor for these three, and this is also where my issue lies. Every single time I started feeling like I was beginning to flow with the gameplay, story, or was excited to reach the next area, I was interrupted with either pointless dialogue from Jot's companions or Moonbeard that doesn't really drive the narrative forward or telling me what I have to do, even though it's completely obvious what has to be done. It's like the devs have no respect for the intelligence of their players. It's like they have accessibility options that make the game easier, which I'm all for. They have an easier difficulty, which I'm also all for. They even have a little version of Moonbeard called Minibeard that gives you hints on what to do, which I'm also all for, since all of these things are optional. But why do you have to interrupt the gameplay to tell me the door in front of me is locked? I know it's locked. These constant interruptions every 10 to 20 minutes of gameplay get so old. Which is why I love the 3D sections or the moments outside of the book the most by the end of the game, since you never experience these interruptions the same way as when you're in the book. So the gameplay flowed so much better, and that's the biggest thing about the Plucky Squire. It just felt like the narration could never get out of the way of just letting you play the game. Then if there's one last little issue I had, it's that the sword lunges too far when you swing it. It's just a little too aggressive and feels like it takes away control from you, which is a shame since I do believe the gameplay feel of the game is pretty amazing, but I just wish the forward momentum of the sword wasn't so much. With that said, do I recommend the Plucky Squire? Ultimately, yes, because the quality is undeniable. There's a vast variety of gameplay mechanics that don't feel out of place, the controls are smooth, the game has a great artistic look, and the music is fantastic. There's plenty of secrets to find to keep your eyes peeled as you make your way through the game, and even though I won't show it, the final boss fight is pretty awesome. I just feel that the game's narrative gets in the way a little too much, and while this game isn't trying to be a hard game, I do feel sometimes they play it a little too safe with their puzzles and even the enemies, which there isn't much variety to them, so both puzzles and enemies could be a little more dynamic. Plus, I wouldn't mind seeing the game give the player a little more freedom in exploring. The game is surprisingly linear, even though the idea behind the game just screams giving the player a vast world to explore. But even though I'm leaving the game feeling mixed, I'm very interested in seeing what they do next. A sequel with this level of polish, but a deeper dive into combat and puzzle mechanics like they displayed here in the Plucky Squire could be a very special game.